Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's time once again to put on the glasses. Frater Oculus here today with some really important information for you. I think this is stuff that's going to be really mind-blowing for you, for those of you that don't have any knowledge about this stuff. This is tremendously important. You know, there are researchers like myself unearthing more and more about reality every single day. So it's really vital to pay attention and keep up, because it's changing. What we know is consistently coming out more and more. They say this is the great age of revealing. And boy, this stuff is coming out really quick. So you got to keep your eyes open and stay aware. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more where this came from. I'll also provide some links and some other information to other channels that you can find out more. I want to talk about something about the divine feminine, first of all, the goddess, as it's called. Menstrual blood now is being thought to have stem cell-like properties that help healing and aging. There was a Harvard study that showed that young mice that gave their blood to older mice actually caused the older mice to regenerate and become younger again. So this is some sort of frightening information. This is a Harvard study, and that discusses vampirism, basically. And the menstrual blood thing is an ancient idea. The idea of Amrita, or Amritas. If you are an occultist, if you've read Aleister Crowley and other occultists that perform these Babylonian rituals that go back to the dawn of time, you'll know that they use menstrual blood as part of this elixir of life, which is supposed to give you a lot of energy, powers, cities, and also regenerate you, make you younger. And it's blood that's basically, been inside of a woman mixed with semen. And this is taken in a holy grail kind of chalice-like cup, which represents the womb, represents the divine feminine. The word kundalini is also known to be the divine feminine, but most people don't understand what that is or what the root comes from. Kunda, the kunda or kuta of Sumerian, is the womb, but it's also a place in the earth, a cave. It's where we get the word, for those of you who are H.P. Lovecraft fans, of Cthulhu. The Kuta is the vagina, and the Kuta is also basically hell. It's a hole in the ground. Hell comes from the Scandinavian goddess named Hel, because Christianity stole all of its later applications from other civilizations that it conquered. So it enslaved and raped Scandinavia, and they stole the goddess there. To prevent people from worshipping it, they made that into the name of their evil place, the antithesis of heaven. So Hel is the Scandinavian goddess. Pan is the image of the devil that we get. Pan is the god of the forest from Greco-Roman mythology. So we have this whole picture forming of femininity being evil. Now why? I'm going to teach you. I'm going to get into that. But, so we have nature, caves, the vagina, the feminine, being evil. When you were going through your period, you couldn't come into the synagogue. When you were pregnant, you couldn't come into the synagogue until after you'd given birth, and you had waited a certain period, because it was considered to be unclean. Now why? In the past, in ancient cultures, it was considered to be holy and religious. And if you see Hinduism, it's a holdover from the much more ancient mystery schools, where they still worship the divine feminine. There are statues of women crouching down giving birth to this day that people come and they place blood or red ochre on that vaginal area to worship it. Now, in Greco-Roman mythology, the idea of Tartarus, or the underworld, Hades, it had 7 layers, just like 7 heavens. There's 7 layers representing the 7 planets, and each one of these 7 layers is the river Styx going inward until it reaches the center, which is called clitor. That's where we get the word clitoris. It's the center of this vaginal cave, this hell, this place that Christianity and the new modern sun-worshipping masculine religions consider to be evil. That's why you see in the Western world we're constantly chopping down the forests and defiling nature. The Native Americans said, "Why would you rape your mother?" And the answer is because this is a patriarchal male basically a solar worshipping society. Worships Saturn and worships the sun. It's all about patriarchy and force. It's not about acceptance and things of that nature, or blending of the two even. Aleister Crowley talked about a blending of the two, male and female, creating a child type of aeon that was coming when people were able to balance the two out. So again, this image is forming of this place under the ground, this womb, and you go there. That's the Kutha. That's the evil feminine place, the dark feminine place. And Cthulhu is a vaginal creature, a pulpy head with tentacles and all of this type of thing. It's a very feminine creature, and it speaks to Lovecraft's fear of the feminine, and the idea of repressing and destroying all of this stuff speaks to Christianity's fear of the feminine as well. If you look at the word sin, this is another Christian appellation that was stolen from Nana Sin, the Sumerian or Babylonian goddess of the moon. So when Jesus says, go and sin no more, what does sin mean? Sin means to miss the mark. It's not what you think it means. And furthermore, the Nana Sin, he's saying don't worship the moon, worship the sun. And he's also saying that the Nana Sin is the divine feminine, is the divine mother, is mater, and mater is, in Latin, mother. It's where we get the word matter or material reality from. So when we say sin, that's where the word sine wave comes from, because the sine itself is a wave, which is what happens when energy begins to slow down. It slows into matter. It slows down, and we see the sine wave, this pulse. It's called spanda in the Vedic. Spanda, the divine pulsation. The divine pulsation is feminine, the feminine heartbeat that creates the matriarchal current, the material world in which we live, the material world, which is the mother world. The mother world is the physical world in which we live. And so when you sin, you're actually just involving yourself in material reality. And when they say this world has fallen into sin, what they're saying is you have incarnated from the spirit world into the physical world. It's not bad. It's just what it is. When they say the fall of man, it's the birth of man. Woden falls off of the tree. He's pinned to the tree of life by the spear of destiny, which is the placenta. The placenta is the tree of life, and the umbilical cord is this spear pinning the child to this tree for 9 nights or 9 months. The child falls screaming again and again and again, meaning rebirth into the spiritual world again and again and again. That's where Jesus on the cross comes from. It's Jesus on the world tree. Sorry, I ran out of recording space there. I had to pause for a second and delete some stuff. So we have a picture now of sin, the physical picture of the devil as we know it, and hell. These are all 3 things that did not exist prior to this new Christianity, not the old Christianity. Because in old Christianity you had reincarnation, you didn't have a hell, you had Sheol in the Old Testament, which just means a grave or a hole in the ground. It's not an actual physical place. And Satan, which means a resistor, doesn't mean an actual physical person or physical creature. So all of these 3 things were introduced from femininity, from goddess worship. Isn't that strange? Well, why would they do that? Now, I want to go back real quick and fill in a gap. When I was talking about Woden and Jesus, both of these men die on the world tree. Okay, and Jesus in medieval mythology, medieval Christian church mythology, it was thought that Jesus died on Golgotha, which is the skull. It means the skull, literally. And Adam was buried by his son underneath of Golgotha. The primordial man, the original man, the atom, the atin, the sun disk, and then his son, Adam's son, went back to the Garden of Eden, broke off a branch from the tree of life, and placed it on top of Golgotha. And that tree grew into the world tree. The world tree is what has the Sephira on it. If you look at the tree of life, it's a world tree. Interestingly, I didn't know this, but the Scandinavians also had basically a type of Kabbalah. It's on their world tree, their tree of life, is exactly similar to the Jewish Kabbalah tree of life. The only difference is the Scandinavians didn't split the Godhead, Keter, into 3 parts. They didn't have a supernal triad, they just had one. But other than that, it's exactly identical. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that strange? So we see this in every ancient culture. How is that possible? Every ancient culture has this world tree that has this Sephira on it. So, looking at this myth, Golgotha, that means the skull. Wait a second, so there's a world tree, and it's on top of the skull, and all this stuff like that. God, or Gad, as I've said before, it can mean Gadriel. It can also mean the ram, Aries. It's a name. Gad is the top of the head right here. And if you look at the actual picture of the cosmic man, Adam Kadmon, right here, you will... This right here is Aries. You see this? This is the symbol for Aries, and this is the top of the head. That's Golgotha. That's where Christ is sacrificed or crucified. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, the crucifix is the present moment. You see, if you look at the Rosa Cross over here, you can see this is a cube. This is an unfolded cube right here, because Jesus wasn't crucified on a cross. I don't think he existed in the flesh, but mythologically speaking, what this cross is, because people were only crucified on large wooden T's, okay? The Tau, which is an Ankh, meaning, life. When you put the serpent on, the brazen serpent, it represents this life, it's a symbol of life. And so what is that top piece doing there? Well, that top piece wasn't inserted until the mythological side came in, and it makes it into the Saturn cube. Okay, when you unfold this is, if you study this, they actually tell you in the secret societies that this literally is a cube. It is the macrocosm going into the microcosm. So that little cross is you, and this is your perceptions. The 5 senses, and the 4 elements, and the 5th element right there. And then you also have the 22 Hebrew letters right there, and this represents Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or on the outside. It gets pretty complicated, but safe to say you have these 3 primal elements, basically the salt, sulfur, and mercury, which is the 3 states of matter. And then on the very inside of this cross you have the petals, excuse me, you have the basically a greater energetic state, a lesser energetic state, and the intercourse in between the two. Okay, so that's, you could call it fire, water, and air. And the reason there's not a 4th one is because Earth is the combination of the other 3. It's an aggregate of the other 3, so it's not a real true element. It's only these 2 male and female polarities here. Okay, and then out of that comes the 7 planets, out of that comes the 12 zodiac. You add them all up, you get the paths on the tree of life, or the tarot, the rota. Alright, so we're getting really deep into this stuff now. This is deep shit, alright, and it's profound when you really go into it. So Christ is every man, is Adam Kadmon. Underneath Christ is Adam Kadmon, and he's on the world tree. He's sacrificed in the present moment. So you and I are on the cross right now in the present moment. The crucifix is, in fact, the present moment, and we're stretched across reality, this 2-dimensional hologram, and we're in the cube. We've literally been cubed. Okay, if you take that cube and you look at it, you can, and maybe I'll put a picture up. You can actually see the 22 parts of the Sephira, of all the paths of the Tree of Life, in that cube. And this is the unfolded cube, which means pre-manifestation, which is the cube, and post-manifestation, which is the cross. So you have the Saturn cube, which opens up and it's also worshipped by the Muslims and by the Jews. And nobody knows why they're worshipping it. I suspect the Jews probably have a better idea, at least, than anybody else. But they don't understand to this extent. The only people that understand are the real, true adepts. So getting back to the world tree, the world tree has roots that grow in underneath this disc. It's like a dome, and then the world tree grows out of this pole at the center called Hyperborea or Atlantis to some people. There's a lot of confusion about it, but originally this world tree grew out of this area. And that doesn't have to be a literal thing, because the world tree can also be the placenta, as I've said. And Christ, the person who dies and is resurrected, literally is you and me, just like Woden. Woden sacrifices himself for knowledge, and he hangs on the tree 9 nights or 9 months before he falls, screaming and crying like a child. And he's only got one eye, right? And that eye, again, is put out by a lance, usually. That lance is the spear of destiny that pierces Jesus, and the blood is collected in that cup, the vaginal cup that we see in Parsifal, in Lancelot and King Arthur, and those legends, those ancient legends. And the ancient Merovingian bloodline king, Dagobert, led a mythological life nearly identical. His eye was put out with a lance. He was killed, sacrificed, on December 23rd, the day when the sun crosses into Capricorn. Now, why Capricorn? Because Capricorn is the gate of death. It's when you want to commit a sacrifice, you wait until the portal is open. And the Merovingians knew this very well. The name Merovingian, Merovinge, Mero means bear. Alright? And the bear goddess that they worship is Diana. And this gets into Princess Diana as well, because she was killed underneath an old Merovingian sacrificial site. The Pont of the Moon, Pont de l'Alma. And this ancient goddess, Diana, is a bear goddess, both bear as in bare-breasted and bear as in she has a bear named Callisto, and she is worshipped as a goddess of nature. Now, the Merovingian king, Mero, or also there's another king named Urza, and that is the bear, the great bear. And if you look in the Necronomicon, the real ancient stuff, not the fake Necronomicon, but the real ancient Sumerian stuff, like if you read the Gates of the Necronomicon, they discuss how basically the ancient Sumerians believed in the Dipper had these 7 gateways in the sky, and it's in Urza. And when the tail of the great bear faces down in December, that's the time of sacrifice. So when the great bear's tail was facing down, Dagobert was sacrificed in the Ardennes forest, in a place, Ardennes means bear, or is a forest of a bear goddess, next to a town of the Merovingians called Satanicum, or Satan I come, or it means with Satan, literally in Latin. So this stuff gets deeper and deeper, folks. I don't know if you're following me on any of this, but this shit gets crazy, okay? And it gets crazier and crazier. Dagobert, what does that mean? Well, Dracobert or Dagonbert is really what it means. It's an ancient root, and Dago means basically dragon, Dracon, Draco, or Dagon. And Dagon, as you know, is the ancient Sumerian deity written about by H.P. Lovecraft, and he has there's a great movie, which is my favorite movie, really, which is a horror movie called Dagon, silly B movie, but it's great, and it's about this ancient deity. So this name of Dagobert literally means priest king of Dagon. He's a pharaoh. He's a European pharaoh, and he is to be sacrificed at this particular date on the Wild Hunt. He goes on what's called the Wild Hunt. If you're into black metal, there's a Watain album called The Wild Hunt, because it's named after this great pagan jubilee, they call it, jubileum. And in this jubilee, the people go on this great wild carousal where they do all this stuff, and it recapitulates everything that happens in the world, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. So he goes out on this wild hunt, and he is sacrificed. He is killed by his brother, just like what is it? Just like King Arthur is killed by his brother. I didn't even realize that until just now. King Arthur is killed by his evil brother with a lance as well. So you see, this stuff all fits together. It's all mythological, and it's the same thing they're feeding you over and over and over again. It's the lance and the grail. The lance, the spear of destiny, and the grail, the male and female, masculine and feminine. And the Merovingians, as you know, are the 13th bloodline of the Illuminati, the reported bloodline of Jesus Christ, right? So how ironic that he dies in the same way, basically, as Woden and Christ, who are the same figure, essentially. They're not just sun kings, but they are hanged men. If you look at the tarot card, the hanged man, he's hanging there with his one eye, and he's finding that knowledge until he is born again. On the 9th day, he comes out of that womb, and there he is. He's born again. It's incredible stuff. To be born again is a pagan ideology, by the way. It has nothing to do with Christianity. There is no point in the Bible in which Jesus ever says you have to be born again. He says you have to be born from above. If you look at John chapter 3, verse 3, in the actual Greek, I suggest you go to the interlinear translation, because everything you know is a lie, people. It's all a lie. And if you look at this stuff, it says nothing about being born again. It says you have to be born from above. Because the Gnostics, the Essenes, who were Gnostics and Buddhist-type people, really, they believed that either you were born from above or you were born from below. And he talks to Nicodemus, saying, you just don't get it. Because you're born from below, you don't have a soul. See, there's only a few people that do, apparently. That's the whole, under their mythology, the whole 144,000. These are the people that have souls. The rest of the people are born from below, and they're mud people, basically. They're robotic, archonic people. They don't have any type of connection to God because they're just made of just the earth. But when you're born from above, you're just here visiting, and you come here again and again and again because you're born of the spirit or of these higher spheres. They literally believed that you were living inside of a dome, and then above the waters, which is the second sphere, there's another sphere, another dome outside this one, which is filled with water, and then another one filled with fire, and then another one, another one filled with air, and then another one filled with fire, and then one filled with ether. And then in between those, you have all these little subdivisions, and that's the tree of life. The world tree has certain levels, and the world tree leads up into these different spheres. Okay, so when Jesus says you have to be baptized by water, he's not talking about having water drizzled on your head. He's talking about going up to the second heaven. He's saying you have to take your astral body and escape from this first sphere, get outside the dome, and get into the second dome. That's your baptism by water, which is to say your initiation, your very first glimpse of what's out there. So this is all just Gnostic stuff, and it's very, very, what's the word for it? I guess supernatural stuff, you know, and it's completely different from everything you've been told. It's all suppressed by the Vatican. All of the translations have been changed. King James was a homosexual and a murderer who hated Jesus and talked shit about him. So really, if you're worshiping the King James Bible and doing all this stuff, you know, you're worshiping a graven image. You're worshiping a dead text that has nothing to do with any type of God or anything. So getting back to, basically, there's Jesus, there's Woden. It's all the same thing. It's all King Arthur, Lancelot, and the lance, and the cup, the Grail cup. The Grail cup is the Kuta. It's it is hell. It is the feminine, the vagina. It's basically, you know, in the river Styx, it flows out from the Kuta because it's the menstrual fluid. That's the divine blood, the blood that they used to drink. Dracula, which also is just like Dagobert. Dracula means son of the dragon. So he's literally saying son of the priest king of Dagon. So one of Dagobert's the priest king of Dagon, and the other guy is also a priest king, is son of the priest king of Dagon, or son of the dragon. And he, if you watch the great, fantastic Bram Stoker's Dracula movie, one of my favorites, used to be my favorite movie, he spears at the very beginning of the movie the cross, the unfolded Jesus cube. He spears it with his lance, this gigantic sword, and as he does so, in the very center, he pierces it, and blood begins to flow down out of it. He takes up the cup, the Kuta, the Kunda, and he collects the blood inside of it, and he says, the blood is the life, and it will be mine, and he drinks of it. And this is representing that ancient ceremony, the ancient mythology of regenerating yourself by taking in the stem cells of the woman through her menstrual blood. Incredible stuff, people. I mean, I'm putting this stuff all together. You guys need to get involved in this stuff. You guys need to start thinking about this shit, because it's incredible. And I want to wrap this up by talking about the Kundalini again. The Kunda, the Kundalini is this feminine divine force that meets with Shakti, right? Which is the male force. But there's another force that Gurdjieff talks about, which is the Kunda buffer. And he calls it buffer because it is like a resistor. He literally calls it a resistor, which prevents the Kundalini from shooting out of you and destroying your body and turning your body into light and dissolving it back into the universe. Now, if it wasn't for this buffer, the entire world would just dissolve like that, because it's free energy and it would shoot out. Just like your electronic devices, they would fry instantly if you didn't have resistors carefully channeling that energy into different areas and reducing it. So your body has Kunda buffer all over it. It has these different areas in the nervous centers which buffer that energy and prevent it from frying out. There's people all over the place in these mental institutions, according to the great masters, that are people that have had their nervous system fried out by Kundalini syndrome or Kundalini release spontaneously, because they were fucking around with something that they didn't understand. And they fried out their nervous system permanently. Just like you fry out a computer chip, you know, when you burn it out and there's a power surge. So that buffer is necessary. It's not evil. We have this idea that the world being in sin is evil, but it couldn't exist if it wasn't in sin. If the world isn't in sign, it can't be in anything at all. It would just be up in Ein Sof. It would be the light. There would be no containers for the light. So these shells, these containers, are Kunda buffer. And the resistor, it's called a resistor in Gurdjieff's books. What is the resistor? Satan. Satan means the great resistor, the great opposer, accuser, opposer, right? So what does that mean? In the Garden of Eden, God is talking to somebody saying, if they eat of the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they will be like us. Well, who's he talking to there, right? Well, first off, it's a remnant of polytheism. It's the Anunnaki. There's multiple gods and goddesses that are having this conversation initially in the old school religion. But you could also say, well, he's one of those people he would be talking to is Satan. So it's God and Satan getting together and talking about it. In Job, there's an angel that takes the place, or takes the role of Satan and goes to visit and test Job. So these people, these two gods, if you want to call Satan a god, or an angel, let's say, God and an angel, an chief angel, are working together. Because without it, the world can't form, you see. So that's why we have this idea in the Bible, well, God is evil. Well, there's good and there's evil because that's the way that stuff works. There has to be that buffer in order to keep life in its shell. So the idea of chaos Gnosticism, for example, which is like, if you ever listen to the band dissection, and you read, there's books by the occult publisher Ixar, I-X-X-A-R, the Temple of the Black Light and all that stuff. It's basically just saying like, oh, and Gnosticism too, certain types of Gnosticism, they're like, this reality is evil, we've got to break out of it. It's not that it's evil necessarily, it is limiting. It limits your freedom, but you can't have any experiences unless you are limited in a form. That's the thing, because if you didn't, you would have no Maya. You would have nothing to measure. Measurement creates the consciousness. So without that, there's nothing. You become limitless possibility instantly, and that's it. And that's probably what happens when you die, or to a certain extent at least. You go up to Ein, you're just limitless light. That's it. There's no possibilities. So you need that confinement in order for everything to occur, in order for all this stuff to occur. Okay, guys, so that's the divine feminine. That's how all of this stuff works, and it's been suppressed. You see, the reason why the divine feminine has been so suppressed is because it's powerful, and they want, the only people who know about this stuff are the people at the top of society, the people that are considered to be the chosen ones. Okay? But you can take this power back, and you can understand it and learn about the goddess inside yourself and what that represents and what that is, because it's very deep. It's symbolic knowledge that can profoundly affect your life in a very practical, pragmatic way. They wouldn't be hiding this stuff for no reason, guys. This is the most powerful knowledge in the world. Okay, so you need to stand up and take authority for yourself and not sell yourself out through any kind of contract or anything like that that you have. You need to stand up and break all contracts, guys. Okay? And you need to start studying this stuff and understand what it's all about. Alright? So, until next time, I hope you enjoyed that one. I got more coming at you. Subscribe, and like, and pass this shit around.